Seem kind of lonely over here. That's it? That's all we got?
Over his other guys and over his baby. Moshe is Shemayim too. And there is Levi, I don't know.
All right. So in this Pasha, after Tetzaveh, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. It's the only Parsha in the entire Torah since Moshe Rabbeinu's birth that his name is not mentioned not once in the entire Parsha. So there are many points made in connection to that. Some are like remozim. Remez means like a hint. Some are based on psukim in the Torah. You understand that what I'm saying is all based on sichas from Rebbe. So one thing that's being said is the fact that that this is Pasha Tetzaveh is usually around the time of Zion Oder. And Zion Oder is the day of Moshe Rabbeinu's passing. And this is why his name is omitted from the Parsha. And on this, the Rebbe asks a very paramount question. He says, what do you mean? If Moshe Rabbeinu passes, does that mean that he is no longer present? On the contrary, the Alter Rebbe brings down from the Zohar that at Tzaddik, after he passes, he is present in the world even more significantly than even before. Because before his neshama was bound in a goof, was limited to the goof, and then after, when it's freed from the goof, then it is unlimited. So we will discuss, the explanation to that. Another point that's made in regard to this fact that there's no mention of Moshe Rabbeinu's name, that his name was omitted from this Pasha on account of the fact that he said after the Egel, as you will learn next week, that the Jewish people were in danger of annihilation on account, because of the sin of the Egel. Moshe Rabbeinu pleaded for them, and Moshe Rabbeinu then said the classic Mesiras Nefesh, where he said, if you do not wipe away this, if you do not forgive them, then please erase my name from your book. That's from the book, from the Sefer, from the Torah. And because Moshe Rabbeinu said, erase my name, that's why there is a Pasha in the Torah that actually does not have Moshe Rabbeinu's name. That's one of the explanations. But then, there seems to be an obvious question. Although Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not present in the Parsha, but Moshe Rabbeinu himself is very much present in the Parsha. Even with a greater allusion, a greater reference than by name. When you refer to somebody by name, it's like referring to him in third person. Everybody understands that? Mm-hmm. When you refer to somebody as you, that's a second person. It's much closer. It's the reality itself. So it's much greater allusion to Moshe Rabbeinu in this parsha than by name.
Isn't that by the name, it's not second person also. If you call somebody by the name, it's not. Like it's
If
not,
you say,
you're not saying you.
if you call somebody by name,
Right.
you're referring to his reference. You can speak about him by name in third person also. On the contrary, you do not speak to a person directly by name. If he is in second person, you don't speak to him by name. You speak to him as you. If you speak to him by name, it is because you're referring to him in absentia, in his absence. Right?
It could also be used maybe in second person, though? Like chiba, lashon chiba.
Lashon chiba is he's calling him, but not speaking to him. He's calling him, and calling him means also that he is absent, and you're calling him to come in. And that's where the Lashon chiba comes in. That even though I don't see him, I call him. That shows extra chiba. You know, it's one thing when you meet a person, say, "Oh, how are you?" It's another thing when you think of him when he is not in front of you.
What about when you say, like, you're a great guy, Moshe? And you're not calling him.
You wouldn't say, if you're talking about the other, you'd say, I think you're a great guy. You wouldn't,
I mean, is that all?
you wouldn't be
It's-
talking to just him.
It's not the this would be in, so to speak, a convoluted way of expressing. You know, for emphasis, you may call it, mention his name, but that's not who you're talking to, the name. You're talking to you. Yeah? Okay. Baruch Hashem. So the Rebbe explains in the Sikha that actually in this Pasha, what's mine? Moshe Rabbeinu is present in this Pasha. You missed a little bit, right? Quickly. Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in this Pasha, the only Pasha in the whole Torah after his birth. And so this question, how come? And one of the things that said is because Moshe Rabbeinu said later next week that when he pleaded for the Eden, that he should be forgiven for the golden calf, he said to Hashem, if you don't forgive them, please wipe me out, erase my name. Because of that, his name was mentioned. So the Rebbe asks, but he is present. And on the contrary, and I mean, he actually present in direct presence. So the explanation is that in fact he's present much more. And what connection is that have? How is that related to the thing that Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Mecheini no misifrecho," erase my name from your sefer? How is that in response to that he is present in more direct fashion? So the explanation is that this whole Indian that Moshe Rabbeinu was pleading for the people who made the Egel, which means the people who committed, so to speak, the most serious transgression possible in that illustrious time, on just after Matan Torah, which means that they had fallen off very, very distant. In order to relate to these people and to retrieve them and to keep, so to speak, a contact with them, it is not enough to relate to them through the name. Moshe Rabbeinu had to relate to them with his whole person. This is the the Mesiras Nefesh. By name is a very important part of a human being, but by definition, a name is something that is given to a person after birth, which means that this is not part and parcel of his being. He is born without a name, and then the name is given to him. And what is the function of the name? Simply speaking, the function of the name is, in fact, to identify him amongst other people, so that this is the means by which other people relate to him, or he relates to other people. So the name is not the real person. This is that aspect of the person, that level of the person, through which he is identified and relates to other people. That's the name. That level of Moshe Rabbeinu, the name, that in fact was not sufficient to retrieve these people who had fallen down to that level of making the golden calf. Only the very essence of Moshe himself, where he puts completely himself on the line, he was able to relate to them and to retrieve them. The Ahavas Yisrael that Moshe Rabbeinu had demonstrated in that episode goes completely beyond the normal principle of Ahavas Yisrael. Normal principle of Ahavas Yisrael is expressed in the Torah as Ve'ahavto l'reyacho kamoicha. Kamoicha means like yourself, which alludes to a person who is like yourself, who is in the same path and the same conviction and the same altitude as you are. But here were people who completely rejected Moshe Rabbeinu's principles, the Torah. So it's not Kameicha. So this is Ahavas Yisrael that goes beyond that level of Ahavas Yisrael that is described in the Torah in the Posuk Ve'ahavto l'recha kameicha. And that was possible only by Moshe Rabbeinu at that level where this is reaching, so to speak, to the very essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, where there he does not leave any yid out, no matter what level he is. This, the Rebbe points out, also explains the fact of how the posik presents this mitzvah. The mitzvah that Ato Tetzaveh, the beginning of this parsha, speaks about is the mitzvah of the Kohanim. That first of all, that you will Ato Tetzaveh, you will tell Yidden that they should present you with fine oil, and the purpose of this oil is to light the candles in the Beis Hamikdash. And who is going to light the candles? Aaron of Aaron. If Aaron or one of Aaron and his children are going to light the candles, why does the oil have to go through Moshe Rabbeinu's hand? Why don't you tell the Yidden to prepare the oil and give it to Aaron? And the explanation is that Aaron was in fact this man who was beloved by all, and he was Oyev Sholem, Yediv Sholem, as you know from the Mishnah. But nevertheless, Aaron, through his approach and his avodah, would have been sufficient to light the candle, to light the Abdul Neshomi. We know that the candles are the Neira this symbolized the Neshamas Israel. That's why there were 7 candles, because there were 7 midos, and all Neshamas come from one or the other midos. And therefore they will symbolize the Neshamas, and Aaron would kindle the lights, and therefore thereby also arouse the Neshamas and kindle the light of the Neshamas. But which Neshamas would Aaron be able to light? Those that are producing a wick, those who can be lit. But Neshamas that are distant, that are completely strange, so to speak, and went and built the Egel, them Aaron could not reach. In order to reach these Neshamas, these people, it has to be specifically only Moshe. This is why Moshe has to be the one to collect the oil. And Moshe has to be the one to represent and to instruct Aaron how to light the candles and so forth. And then this will already include all the, no matter how far and no matter where what their status is. And this, to conclude this, or to complete this thought, this is the connection. Moshe Rabbeinu said to Hashem, if you don't forgive them, erase my name from your book, which means that Moshe Rabbeinu put himself on the line to retrieve and to save these Eden who had fallen like this. And that's why his name is missing from this parsha, because that would not have helped these neshamas, these people. What would help the neshamas? His personal presence. This is the connection, that in this parsha there is no mention of Moshe's name. What is mentioned? Moshe himself, because that is what Moshe Rabbeinu insisted, that he saved these people. And the only way it could be is through his personal intervention, not through his name. Which means, in principle, that it is conceivable that a Yid should be very distant from Yiddishkeit, from Torah mitzvahs, and it should be so distant that calling him by name would not arouse him, would not bring him back. There is a well-known phenomenon, I could say, that when you meet a Yidden, even one who is totally estranged from Yiddishkeit, even one who intermarried, and you tell him, your children are not Jewish, he is feel to be tight. He was very angry. What do you mean not Jewish? He went and he married a Goyke, right? And he will not tolerate you saying to him, you're not Jewish. Now it's to retain this name, because he's a Jewish name only. There's no other thing, no other performer. He doesn't join in any which way. And yet, he will not give up this title, no matter what. What if Chas v'Sholom one went and built a golden calf? Then he loses all contact. Right? He gave up his title, his Jewish title. So by calling him by name, will not bring him back, because he's given up his title. Who can bring him back? What can bring him back is a totally different approach than when you touch his very soul. Not that part of the soul that has a name A name means that he can be known externally. Only that which is known only to him deep down. Externally, he had completely rejected it. A name is, as we said before, is the external aspect of a person. This is how a person is known to others. That he had rejected, unfortunately. And even so, he still retains his Jewish neshama. And he can still be reached, but there it is a much difficult way to reach him. You need Moshe Rabbeinu himself, not his name, to tell him, hey, Moshe is calling you, he's not going to help you. Not going to help you. Moshe has to come in person, and confront him personally, person to person. That can bring him up. That can bring him back. This is essentially, so to speak, an analysis of what we have discussed now. This is, in brief, a sikha from Rebbe, and as always, primarily we want to translate the sikha in our own reality. There are, in a person, as you already know, you learn Chassidus, there are many levels. There is the practical level, what's called machshava dibur u'maisa, thought, speech, and deed. Then there are the midos, the emotive levels, how a person feels. Then there is the intellect, what a person understands. And then there is, beyond that, there is what we call the essence of the neshama. This is called, also known as rotzen and noinek, the will and the delight of the neshama. Normally, a person is well aware and he relates to the level of machshava dibur ma'isa, thought, speech, and deed. He learned what is the proper way to act, and in many cases it becomes habitual, a habit. Right? It becomes a habitual. Okay, this is what they call tradition. Traditionally, this is what we do. Unfortunately, we're coming to Pesach. Many people have a traditional Pesach Seder. They don't have, unfortunately, they don't, a Pesach with all kinds of different delicacies coming from the bakery is not a Pesach, but this is a traditional Pesach. Some, on the other hand, they do keep certain things, but this is, so to speak, at the level of action. The deed, speech, they can talk about history or whatever they talk about Yiddishkeit, or thought. What is the Jewish thought? The famous episode where a rabbi was hired in the shul, a young rabbi, enthusiastic. He's going to put a fire under his congregants and bring them back to life. He got up and started talking about Shabbos. My friends, Shabbos is a holy day, and there are many things that we don't do, many things that we do, and Shabbos is something which is very important in Jewish life. After the speech, the president calls him up and says, Rabbi, you insulted all my congregants.
You what?
You insulted all our congregants. What are you doing? You have to be more careful. Okay? So next week the rabbi speaks about kashrus. That there is a Jewish diet, what's called a diet that is traditional Jewish, and we don't need this, and don't need this, and don't need this, and we don't mix milk. Briefly, whatever whatever is able to to insert and says, this is the diet that keeps our souls pure and keeps our mind pure and keeps us aligned with Jewish tradition. After the speech, the president says, Rabbi, the Congregants are going to run away from you. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? And what are you trying to do? Are you trying to insult the people? So he says, exasperated, so what should I speak about? Rabbi, what do you mean? Speak about Judaism. So there are different levels, people relate on different levels. There are things that touch a person emotionally, and then there are things that touch him intellectually. He understands the truth, he learns Torah and so forth. So if we were to, so to speak, pay attention and relate to the people at various levels, we will find, like in this case, in this little, whatever it is, it could be a play on the word of rabbi, but the point is that he spoke for the pulpit and he was invited to speak as a rabbi. And there were things that he was allowed to speak about, and the things that he's not allowed to speak about, even though he's speaking proper things, Api Torah. In other words, yes, these are the congregants that gather in the shul, and they want to hear a rabbi, but they can't hear things which go against their grain, against their habit, against what they like, against what they're used to, whatever it may be. In other words, there's a limit. Even though they came to shul, they want to hear the rabbi, but they didn't come with their whole person. There's a certain limit. The truth is that in every person there's a limit. And what happens is, we go, surely this is very low, but one becomes emotionally attached to Torah and Yiddishkeit. And then we here in Yeshiva, we learn Chassidus. Chassidus is that which opens up our mind to Torah, to Yiddishkeit, which is altogether a kind of a miraculous thing. How can a person who lives in the physical world and is totally dependent on the physical world, and yet his mind is able to conceptualize and to relate to things that are not physical and are godly, completely negate the physicality and so forth. So these are all different levels at which a person can grow and actually relate to. Yet, there are moments where, just as in this insignificant example, when the Rabbi speaks about kashrus, and I don't have necessarily a kosher kitchen at the level that the Rabbi speaks about, then I tell the Rabbi, don't talk about it. You're insulting me. There is a level, there's a point where even somebody who learned Chassidus, even somebody who learns Chassidus in the deepest way, and he understands it, he tries to understand it. At a certain point to say, hey, this goes against my grain. I can't relate to this. He gets Hashem is not dealing fairly with me. I was disappointed. Hashem is not dealing fairly with me. What happens then? What happens then? I sit and learn, everything is right, everything is good. Then, whatever happens, I'm angry at Hashem because I had this deal and didn't go through, and I'm starting from scratch, and I'm disappointed. In other words, no matter how well one is versed and engaged in Yiddishkeit, at a higher level, not just machshava dibur ma'aseh, but on an emotional level and an intellectual level, even on the Chassidus. There is no guarantee that this Hasidic mind will not, at some point in time, be negatively, have a negative attitude. It's scary to say, but that's the fact. I mean, I myself have witnessed many people who learn Chassidus for many years, and then whatever it is in life, things happen, and they get disappointed, and they get angry, and they drop the whole thing. In other words, what I'm pointing out, as I say, that the name is a very important thing. Everything that we learn, these are all things that we have acquired, all knowledge that we have acquired, whether it is machshava dibur ma'aseh, thought, speech, and deed, that we learn how to act, or our emotive, that we were touched emotionally, or we were touched intellectually. All this is being touched from outside. We learn something. This is what's called the name of a person. How did I learn? I was sitting in yeshiva and learned. So we're part of a group. This is all the external part of the person. Even the intellect is, in that case, an external part of the person. The Rambam explains that anything that a person learns and knows and understands, even though he understood it, it always remains something secondary to him. It's like you attach something. If you attach two things, they're not one entity, even though they're attached quite well. It's called a superimposed reality. What is it in us, in a Yid, that guarantees that a Yid stands firm and steadfast, unwavering, no zigzag, without doubt, without question, under all circumstances? This is when he refers to himself, not by name, meaning to say, not only just what I have learned, what I know, but who am I? What do I stand? Who am I? What is my identity? What is a Yid? Everyone has to know the Ato, that's Ato Tetzaveh. At some point in time, one has to know that there's a reality within him that goes beyond anything that he has learned, anything that he understood, anything that he can argue, right and wrong. His own personal reality. Just to take an analysis in terms of our history. Our history, is phenomenal. But I'm not going to go to the history, the horrible history like Holocaust or Tzoros or any kind of attack against it. I'm talking about, let's say, the early years of the communists. The early years of the communists. Before they became vicious animals. their approach was that the world has now progressed to the point where we can prove beyond the shadow of a doubt, and every intelligent person will admit that there is no creator. And they had, this whole scientific, for whatever it is. Unfortunately, they were very effective for a while. People who thought, this is where it's important to understand, people who thought that their Yiddishkeit is something which is based on their surface knowledge. It's clear to me. I know it. Unless they are extremely well versed and have very profound minds, they can be easily thrown off guard. It can be easily thrown off guard. I want to give you a simple example that prevailed in the early years. I don't know, it's in Russia, throughout the entire world. It says in the Parsha, in the first day of creation, it says, "Vayemer Elokim yehi oir vahi oir." Hashem said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Right? You believe everything it says in the Parsha? Yes, of course. How was it light? There was no sun. What kind of light was that? For someone who does not have, okay. There are different approaches. Say, look, I don't know, I'll ask my Rebbe. But I have no, this is not a difficulty to me. Somebody who doesn't have that conviction, that approach, and he thinks he ought to know it all, and he says, oh yeah, you're right, I don't know the answer to that. And you know what that can do? That can throw him off balance. And I wouldn't doubt that many people are thrown off balance with these kind of silly, totally ignorant questions. And then all kinds of other things. I said, the Soviets in the early years, they actually staged public debates about questions on Yiddishkeit, on religion. Public debates. Because they were convinced they have public debates and they will wipe the floor with these rabbis. It didn't take them long to realize that they are on the losing side. And then they quickly stopped these debates. It didn't last very long. But they had these public debates. What happened as a result of these public debates? These public debates or other literature that they spread and so forth. It was obvious. There were three different groups that resulted from this. There were those who never fell away. They listened to them, and it made sense to them, and they thought, oh, they found the truth, and whatever, either they pursued it, sooner or later they regretted it, but that was too late already. They ruined their lives. There are many like that in Russia. There was another group that said, okay, like I said before, I know the answer to this, but this is the way I was raised, this is the way I'm going to live, and I'm sticking to it. Then there was a third group. This is what's called the the third group, they said, what you were saying, you're denying to me my own life. How can you deny my own life? This is me. You can't even approach it. If I don't have the answers, I don't have the answer. It doesn't bother me. I am for real. This is not something that I can argue intellectually, emotionally. This is me. I am for real. And because I'm for real, it didn't touch him at all. He went on with the fullest life and beauty of his life. There was no touch at all. As I'm talking to you, I reminded myself a very interesting thing. Just recently, my wife read me an article, told me, read this article. This is an article printed in Jewish press. Okay? You should know, your wife tells you to read something, better read it. Anyway, it was really very interesting article. The article is written by a lady who's probably now in the 70s. She was in university in 1964. She was an 18-year-old girl from Bes Yaakov. It was not very common in those years. Bes Yaakov girls should go to university. But she went. Whatever it means that she had some leanings to the outside, whatever, she went to college. And she took a course in theology. Do you know what theology is? Religions. In the university. In theology about God. And of course her professor taught a course. And he said that there is no such thing, denying everything straight out. No such thing. And now she is supposed to give a report, write a paper on his course. She's supposed to write a paper on this course. And she found this paper now, from whatever it is, 50 years ago. Found this paper in her, she was cleaning up house, whatever it is, she found this paper. And she reprinted it. In this paper, this 18-year-old, university student, ex-Bes Yaakov girl, writes like this. In response to my professor's declaration of such and such, blatant, I say that you're wrong. And this is important. I'm not saying it on the basis of some scientific study or some highly respected entity that did some research. I'm saying it on the basis of my own life. This is what substantiates my life and my being. Just as I can deny me, I cannot accept what you say. There's a whole article about the Torah and everything else. And there's other logical arguments, but this was her approach. On this paper, her professor gave her a big F, red F, top of the paper.
The newer form of A.
An F, you know what an F is? An F means fail. Well, fail, okay? So she apparently contested it, and she went to the dean. And the dean studied the paper, and he gave her a bigger A.
Bigger A? Oh, bigger A.
Right, yeah, big F and big A. A piece of history. The point is, everyone has to find his own reality. It's not enough to know what you learn and to understand it and to practice it in thought, speech, and of course there has to be trained because that is very important to to get a habit and to do things right and so forth. But you have to be real to yourself. This personal reality, this is what carries a person through under all circumstances. Nobody can deny to you who you are. They can argue with your logic. They can argue with your sources. Did you understand this correctly? Not understand. They can argue with that. But they cannot argue with who you are. This is, I think, the big lesson from this Pasha, that it has no reference to Moshe Rabbeinu by name. Because in this Pasha, Moshe Rabbeinu had put himself out to retrieve and salvage people who were not salvageable by name. To tell them Moshe Rabbeinu is calling you would not mean anything. And I feel that this is an important thing to reflect on. To understand that whatever argument, whatever you learn, the basis of what you learn, the reason we understand Torah, the reason we understand Chassidus is because of who you are, not because of any logical arguments. It makes sense because of who you are. That's the real person. This is the only real reality in I said a Yid cannot be lost. Like they said that like oil. Oil cannot be mixed with any liquid, any material. Not only it cannot be mixed, that's what this parsha is about oil. What is the property of oil? It doesn't mix with anything. And it's constantly climbing upwards. You put oil into, a drop of oil on a piece of paper, even on wood, it'll crawl itself. It'll spread out. It will not stay in place. This is the oil. This is the reality of the neshama of each one of us. And it is important for as we are going through Yeshua, as we are learning and so forth, to identify personally, not just intellectually, but personally with what we're learning. To find it in ourselves. Then, once it touches, comes into reveals the real soul, then you know that there's no way that you can get lost. It will always surface. Nothing can supersede that. This is why, they said the Rabbi Sikha, as we concluded, this is how even the people who made the golden calf were also able to be retrieved. Even though they completely rejected and they fall off to the lowest ebb and denying, going into idol worship in the worst possible way. But they did not lose who they are. And Moshe Rabbeinu was able to bring them out through, the expression, you grab him by his hair and pull him out. That's how it is. Hashem should help each one of us to this is a mincha call, to find a personal element in leadership. Not that this is right, this is true, this makes sense. It can make sense one day and not make sense the next day. It can be exciting one day and can be boring the other day. This is why when Eden received the Torah, they knew that the only way to receive the Torah is by saying Naaseh v'nishma. What is Naaseh v'nishma? We spoke about it in the past. Naaseh v'nishma does not mean that we give up on our intellect. I pointed out, I think we spoke not long ago, that Naaseh by itself, they said twice, Naaseh by itself, and the Rebbe didn't accept it and didn't give him the Torah. Because that's not the point. You have to be fully there with all your intellect, with all your capacity, soul capacity. But you have to realize that the only way to get there is through Naaseh. Why? Because this is way beyond the intellect. This is the essence. And the only way to reach the essence is by saying Naaseh, I'm with you. This is me. And this opens up a person's mind and opens up a person's heart. And then all of a sudden everything is beautiful. Everything is perfect. I understand it. It makes sense. It's pleasant. It's pleasing. Because you were there. You learn halacha, you learn a piece of Gemara. I don't know which Gemara you learn precisely, but I can warranty without even asking that none of the Gemara that you learn is something that you've experienced in your own life. Right? That has any practical implication to you. What Gemara are you learning? You don't seem to smile, so what Gemara are you learning?
Megillah and Kedushin.
Megillah and Kedushin. Okay.
I find some correlation, things, practicality.
Oh, which Perek in Kedushin do you learn? What?
Then Daf by K.
Dad?
Daf Hey?
Dav Hey?
Yeah.
Okay.
First parak.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, right. If I remember Dav Hey is talking about Bishtar. Okay. Nobody's Makadosh a woman today with the star. It's out. We have a very standard way to Makadosh a woman. We have a chuppah, and under the chuppah he gives her a ring, and that's a gift. Star doesn't. What are you talking about star? And what is a star? A star, the Gemara says, right? You write on a piece of paper, pick up here. Hayakudeshusly. Who ever does anything like this? Excuse me? A cheap guy, right? But the girl is not going to accept that. What is this? Right? And you're learning it seriously, and it's a serious limit, and it's very important that you understand it. Very important to understand it. Because in it are lying all kinds of different insights of Torah, and if you bring yourself to bear, it'll have meaning to you. But practically speaking, it has no meaning. So now we are coming to Purim, and then Pesach, particularly Purim. You should know that Purim is in fact representative of this principle that we're speaking about. There was an interesting thing said about Purim. I'm jumping the gun, but see, I'm talking about the Sinyan. It's a week early. Interesting thing about Purim. You know that Purim was a combination of a year's time that Eden were threatened with annihilation. And they lived under this threat for close to a year. Total annihilation. How did they live during this year? No, how did they function? So there's an interesting expression in Likutei Torah that lehoya bahem machshavas chutz. None of them, they did not have an external thought. What is the meaning of an external thought? An external thought, not chas v'sholom, a thought of jumping away, going over to Haman's side. That's not praiseworthy. That's not what we're talking about. An external thought means people, even let's say, were confident that they will be saved. Confident, Yos confident. They did not even think about it. Are we going to be saved? They didn't even think about it. They have to go on with their lives the way Ayid is. And if they are going to be saved, how is it going to be? How is it going to happen? What's going to be? Like just today, right? We know that Mashiach is coming. How is it going to happen? We're not privy to that information. The Rambam even writes. The Rambam says that these things, how it's going to happen, really is not a principle in Yiddishkeit, and we don't know it until it happens. And yet we stand steadfast with this belief, clearly that it's imminent. How can an intelligent person, have such confidence in something that he can't even, so to speak, project happening? The answer is, this is what Ayid is. It's in Hashem's hand, and this is how it is. To recognize, to allow to surface this inner voice, this inner reality of a person. To identify personally with Yiddishkeit, personally with Torah, personally with who you are, is the key to all other faculties. So that when you learn whatever it is, ubishtar, or you're learning chumash, whatever you're learning, it's yours. The Torah was given to you. Whether you understand it or not, you're learning your own. And that's how it seeps in like oil, seeps in, and it permeates your whole being, and it gives you life. I'm so helpful that we should all be strong in, confident, never have chas v'sholom any wavering, any doubt, because we are in touch with ourselves. Tzlacha.